sparkling, golden, pure, refreshing. A beverage as old as history.
Beer is something that's happening now. It's just exploding across the country. Hopefully it will lead to some really interesting changes as far as how consumers think about beer.
We're making beer here in Oakland the way you would have had beer here in Oakland when this building was built, which was 1890.
I figured if I'm going to bartend, I want to take it as far as I can. So I became a BJCP beer judge. I'm now a national level beer judge there. And I decided to become a certified Cicerone as well. The Cicerone program is a certification program for people that work in the beer industry. Ray Daniels, the founder, started the program out of a need to give people, like me and like other people that have been working in the beer industry for a lot longer than I have, to be able to say, well, I have this title, I'm a certified Cicerone. That's something I'm really looking forward to and excited about, is that more restaurants, especially, even more than bars, more restaurants will start carrying really good beer. But then my big concern with more bars and restaurants that haven't dealt with beer before carrying more beer is that, are they going to take care of it properly? Beer needs to be refrigerated consistently. It should never be allowed to get warm or to sit at room temperature. Bars put in draft systems that probably never should have. Draft systems require a lot of maintenance, and if it's not done, you A, ruin the beer for everyone, and B, you ruin your own draft system. Across the board, industry standards aren't being adhered to, and this is a way to say, look, these are these industry standards that we should all be following, and kind of nationally implement them.
So the official style is called California Common. Back in the 1800s, early 1900s, it would have been called steam beer. The interesting thing about steam beer is that it's basically the only style of beer that was born here in America. We definitely have Americanized versions of all sorts of, like you said, there's black IPAs, there's West Coast IPAs, but ultimately these are all styles that were born in Europe that we've kind of adapted. Steam beer typically ferments right around 57. So it's not as cold as a typical lager, but it's not as warm as a typical ale. So it's almost like a hybrid. And that's really the difference between a lager and an ale. Is a lager is basically a cold fermented beer, whereas an ale is a warm fermented beer. 1840s, 1850s, this is before refrigeration. So they developed a strain of yeast that it was a lager strain of yeast, but it could ferment at a little warmer temperatures. So it has a lot of lager characteristics, but it also has a lot of ale-like characteristics in the sense that you can get some fruity esters off of it if you wanted to, and it can definitely take hops a lot like an ale can.
I think that food and beverage awareness overall has just increased greatly in the United States over the past 10 years or so. We have a Duranka XX bitter here. And the aroma, the initial sense you get from the aroma is a nice fruitiness. There's a kind of like a passion fruit-like aroma. Maybe a touch of banana. Then you want to take a sip. And you want to let the beer coat all the surfaces of your mouth. So you're kind of resetting your palate and getting ready to take your second sip, which is where you're really going to taste the beer. That's a delicious beer.
We're not filtering our beers, we're naturally carbonating them, so it's just kind of rustic, sort of working man's, a little hoppy. Nothing compared to some of the stuff you get out here on the West Coast nowadays. It's certainly not like any of these IPAs or double IPAs or anything like that. But for a lager, it's pretty hoppy. In our second beer, which is called Burning Oak Black Lager, and that's made with the same yeast. It's a black beer, but it is a lager, so it's not nearly as heavy as it looks. It's a lesson for a lot of people who really don't know that much about beer, because most people when they think of lager, they think basically of Pilsner. They think of something that's straw-colored and light and sort of not too full-flavored, but it's great to show them that Pilsner is just one kind of lager. A lot of folks in San Francisco seem to be kind of into the whole idea of this boutique-y beer out of the out of the hood of Oakland, you know. Like, I mean, it's kind of like, it's almost like, how quaint. Let's buy that ghetto beer that they make out there.
Beer is something that's happening now. It's just exploding across the country, or even in beer scenes where there's been a lot of good breweries and things like that, like in San Francisco Bay Area. You could argue that this was where craft beer began, with Anchor Brewery and everything. There's all these different flavors available, and it's all still beer. And even now, years later, I'm still tasting beers that are unlike anything I've ever had before, which is really exciting.